Hey, what's good, people? This portion of the podcast, the Option Podcast, episode 61, is brought to you by NY Varsity Sports. That's me. That's me. The NYV. Watching me. Watching you. This is episode 61. Tessa Greenberg's in the house, and the episode starts right now.
Woo!
Step into a world, but there's no one there. Yes, y'all. You don't
Hi.
stop. Welcome. This is episode 61. This is the Option Podcast. I am Jason DeBias, and my guest this week is actor, editor, film editor, and God knows what else. Goddess. the new princess of Brooklyn. Actually up for re-election. Tessa Greenberg, what's up?
Hey, Jason. I'm good. Thanks for having me. How are you?
Oh my God, I'm good. How's Brooklyn? Yeah. How do they
It's
feel
chilling.
about the wedding being canceled?
The wedding? What wedding?
Big old Jewish wedding. It was supposed to have like 10,000
Oh
people.
gosh, I don't know. There's
Did you hear about that on the news?
no, I mean, I know that there's a lot of holidays that were happening in the Orthodox Jewish community and the Hasidic community, which caused a large spike in COVID. And there's been a lot of political unrest around that happening, but I don't think I've heard about a wedding.
Yeah, there was. It actually made national news all the way here to Hermosa Beach. There was a very popular rabbi. I think his relative was getting married, and it was supposed to have 10,000 people. And because Brooklyn is one of the boroughs, never mind cities, that happen to be doing really well dealing with COVID,
Right.
like where everybody else is going stable, and of course some of these crazy ass states are going up now
Yeah.
because I guess they wanted to do it their way, which we can talk about later. Brooklyn is one of those places that are going down. Me too, Hermosa Beach. Like
Good.
we have a lot of people that are about freedom out here, and I don't like to associate that with Republican.
Sure,
I just
sure.
think that's disingenuous and unfair because they're not all like that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of Republican space rangers out here. It's not uncommon to see someone on their bike, like on their bicycle with a big Trump flag and
Sure.
riding up
I
and down the
think like,
Strand.
New York was so hard hit in the spring that like overall New Yorkers are pretty good about like following the rules and, wearing a mask, keeping their distance and stuff for the most part. But yeah, obviously it's a city of 8 million plus, so not everybody is going to be like that. But, we had dozens of thousands of people die. So
Yeah.
definitely makes people here a little bit more cautious, which is good.
Definitely. I got a question for you. I mean, God, there's so much we can catch up on and talk about, and maybe we'll throw a little Marymount in there. I mean, if they're deserving or not,
An alma mater.
I mean, like me and Will were talking about Patricia Simon or whatever, how she made the news in a
Oh,
bad
yeah.
way. Did you do you remember
I
that?
didn't see that either. I guess I haven't really followed Marymount news since graduating in 2000, 2007. It's okay. I don't mind
Um,
aging myself.
All right. So here's the thing. It's normal, normal year. Everybody's going about their business. Late February, March. The warning signs come. We got something coming, and it's big, and it's called COVID or Corona. Um, Months go by. People get shut down. Right? Weeks go by. This group doesn't behave like adults. The government, treats them like children. Shut down, lockdown, and now everything's starting to open up. But there's this long period of time that we had to do nothing. Now,
Right.
Tessa, don't get me wrong. I'm good at doing nothing. All right, you good at doing
hmm
nothing? I'm totally frigid. Okay.
It
I'm
depends
Yeah.
sometimes. Yeah.
Well, like to quote Sanford Meisner, there's no such thing as nothing. Like, no, for me, I could nothing something,
Right.
and I had these spurts where I got to keep moving. Like my wife, she got to keep moving. If she goes backwards, she'll die.
Yeah.
She's a shark like that. But I guess my question is, and only because of your current zip code, how much has COVID made people hypersensitive to the two biggest issues that have been happening in the last 6 months, socially speaking? One is just everybody's ability to be responsible. And of course, there's the issue of race and police brutality, which I know you're huge on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even if no one knew, look no further than your wall on your social network. Do you think it was actually, I'll just start easy. Um, we got our guy Floyd, right, in
George
Minnesota,
Floyd.
gets choked out,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Do you think that was an inciting incident that just put people over the top, that where it boiled
Mm-hmm.
over, or do you also think that COVID has made people hypersensitive to everything because of people having more time in their hands?
Yeah. I think it's both. And I think to sort of ground it back to what you were saying based on my zip code, because I live in New York and I'm in Brooklyn.
It's my hometown.
And New York has been like a center city for a lot of protest and civil unrest and the fight for racial justice, essentially. I see it as both. I think that, in New York, the Black Lives Matter movement was really big when Eric Garner, who's a New Yorker, was killed by the police.
Yep.
And so when we saw George Floyd murdered by the police back in April, it was triggering to say, like, well, this is still happening. The police are still killing us without any accountability. And now that the world has like come to a grinding halt because of COVID, even more people can pay attention to it. So, even though there has been racial injustice for 400 years in our country, and we're just now capturing it on camera in the last, 10, 20, 30 years, even on TV and stuff before cell phones, like this is the first time in our history where there's so many eyes on it because of COVID, because less people are working, more people are at home and have, easier access to being able to pay attention to things like that. And I also think that there was greater civil unrest because our country's government, both at a federal and state level, had already let the people down in this other way, in this way of healthcare and in this way of leadership and resources. Like by the time that the George Floyd news came out in late May, we had already had a couple months of being let down by leadership and by law enforcement. So this was like kind of being kicked, what's the saying when you kick a dead horse or something like that?
Yeah.
Like, or you throw
Beat,
salt in the wound. That's what it
yeah.
was. Beat a dead horse, right?
Yeah. I like salt in the wound.
Salt in the wound, yeah. It's like throwing salt in the wound. So you have a country who's not taking care of you, whose leadership in a position of law is not giving you the healthcare you need, giving you the resources and access to mutual aid, and people are losing their jobs and they can't pay their rent, but they're still being evicted. So it's like everywhere we're looking, our governmental leadership is failing us. And then you see them killing us, like George Floyd, and like that was it. I think that was like the powder keg was lit.
Yeah, I remember there was a female player in the WNBA that said the patience left her body when the breath left the body of George Floyd.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people, it's an uncomfortable thing to talk about, and I've talked about this in multiple episodes, and I've done my due diligence to talk to people whose activism and symbolism are kind of like kissing cousins. You in particular, I had Rachel Perez, and of course, if I'm gonna talk about a black issue, because this is a black issue, do my diligence and make sure I have a lot of black guests on. In fact, 8 of my last 12 guests are African American. So
That's great.
and
Yeah.
I identify with being African American. My mom's black. My father's
I am just a Jewish white
yeah.
lady.
Yeah.
That's my background.
Yeah, I mean, my mom's black. My father's white. 3 sisters are black. Grandma's black. So, and
Yes.
Flatbush Avenue is predominantly African American, or
Yes,
if not
yes,
West
and
Indian,
historically so,
Indian.
yeah.
So for a long time in my life, I identified with being African American. In fact, I didn't even see a white guy till I was like 7.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think you're right in the sense that we're hypersensitive because now we're glued to social network. We're glued to whatever's supposed to happen next, right? You're losing your job. You could get kicked out. Landlords, I mean, some of these landlords have a mortgage to meet too. So if you're not going to defer their mortgage, they have that problem too. And then there's some landlords that defer their mortgage, but they're still trying to get rich. So I had a huge problem with it for a long time ago, just from my personal experience. People that listen to the podcast, I'm not going to go through all of them again. From my mother, both uncles, one who's dead, shot, and my grandma, who was like this political activist in Queens in Astoria, building tomato gardens in the ghetto. So there's something I wanted to educate some people on about the police, about chokeholds. All right, before we go any further.
Sure.
And some people may see it in documentaries, but because I went to Ranger School, and and I'm a big avid fan of mixed martial arts. Chokeholds became banned because police did not know how to execute it without asphyxiation. Think of Eric Garner's death by asphyxiation, right? Floyd, death by asphyxiation, and that was a knee, right? That wasn't even like an arm choke. So for the people out there, I'm going to limit chokeholds to two types of chokeholds, so I don't go off the deep end. One, there's a chokehold that cuts off the blood flow at where the carotid artery is. So elbow down like this, come up, carotid artery's here, cuts off the blood flow to the brain. 5-6 seconds, you take an uncomfortable nap. but you're actually okay. And the second kind of chokehold is a forearm across the throat that cuts off your breathing, where you can exhale, but you can't inhale. I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
Right.
I can't breathe.
Ugh.
I can't breathe.
Oh God, yeah.
So that's why. So for all the idiots out there, it's like, if he said he couldn't breathe, how could he say I can't breathe if he couldn't breathe? Asshole.
Think about it.
Asshole.
Yeah.
That's how. So I just wanted to get that out of the way, because I have friends, as you know, I have friends from all kinds of backgrounds who we don't insult each other, and now we can have a conversation. So what happened was they banned chokeholds because the cops didn't know how to do it. So then they started using nightsticks, and now you have concussions, now you have broken bones, and then you have tasers. So all of these forms of policing has gotten worse and worse and worse.
Please. There's a really widely known complaint on behalf of a lot of police departments that they themselves say they don't have a lot of the training to go out and do what they're asked to do. And this is not just something that's being observed by the public, but something that internally they're telling their supervisors, like, hey, you're going and asking us to deal with someone on the street who's maybe having a mental health crisis, but we are not mental health professionals, That's a really severe example. And then you have something like you're talking about, where like you have to be trained in martial arts, and like you have to really understand what you're doing on like a biological, physical level. And you have a cop who's never had that training ever and doesn't actually understand anatomy in that way. Right. So this is another example of like a cop carrying out an order that they haven't been properly trained to do. And that's not just something that we're seeing, that's something that a lot of there's a lot of internal messaging from officers saying that, like, can you stop asking us to do 18,000 things, because we're only trained to do a few things. Yeah.
And I guess we're going to dive back and forth, because I already drove us both off the cliff. So let's just keep going. And we're just starting. And this is like Rachel Perez and I had a disagreement about defunding the police. And I thought defunding the police was a mistake, because I think the training is exactly what they need. I think, and I wouldn't say fund the police either. I would say manage the allocation of resources. Manage the allocation of resources. And in VA, there's a VA in New York, in the Bronx. It's wonderful. It's awesome. There's a VA in LA. It's a hot mess. It's ridiculous. You run as fast as you can. Big cities, same amount of money put into it. So my conclusion, based on my information, misallocation of resources. I think they should redirect resources, and the police have funded because they get tons of donations from here, and benefits and all that stuff.
They're overfunded.
Two things, and stop me at any point. One, the retraining and extensive training of officers. If it's 3 months or if it's 6 months, let it be a year. Let's get some real cops out there. Two, actually, let's make the salaries more competitive so it's more attractive to people who are more competent.
I think that there's two concerns I have there.
Please.
Let's start with the training and the retraining. That's been happening for decades. Retraining and more training has been going on for years, where we see issues like this happen where a cop doesn't have any accountability for something they do. So they'll fire them and then they'll rehire them and they'll put them on to something like desk duty where they're not out in the streets. And then they make them go to a certain amount of training so they can go back out onto the streets. But it's really just kind of like a slap on the wrist. What they're not getting is holistic training on, like, this is how you deal with someone who is suffocating. This is how you deal with someone who's having a mental health crisis. This is a domestic dispute. Like, we have been retraining for many, many, many years.
Yeah.
And we now, like, body cameras. So, like, we keep reforming, we keep retraining, nothing changes.
Yeah.
So, like, that's my first concern. And then in terms of salary, a lot of officers in New York City make $100,000 a year. That's a lot of fucking money that,
Yeah.
like, I've never seen in my lifetime.
I'm actually talking about recruiting. Like, if
Yeah.
their recruitment salary is $36,000, which is
Right. So
equivalent
you
to
could, yeah.
which is equivalent to a party clown.
Well, you don't need a degree to be a cop. You don't need a college.
I,
You don't need a college degree.
they took away that criteria. You had to
I think
have
it
you had
depends
to
on
have a
the
2 year
where.
degree or 2 years military experience. For
Yeah, and
NYPD,
military,
which they took
they
away.
love military because if you've been in the military, you know how to take orders, and they
Yeah.
like a militarized,
Well,
force.
we're also better de-escalators than the police are. So
I believe that.
I
I'm
mean,
staunchly anti-war.
yeah,
I would probably agree with Rachel that I'm more an abolitionist,
right.
because I just don't think that the cops they show up after crime happens. They don't prevent it.
Very, very. I saw that on your wall too, and
Yeah.
I honestly, it's so weird because I think that's where the left and the right can agree. Like, I'm a big, all right, as you know, I'm very left when it comes to social issues. I do
Sure.
think, I don't care who you marry. I don't care who you fall in love with. I don't care who you change your mind and fall in love with, right? You can be straight and you can be bi and you can be gay. And then on Sunday morning, you can be straight again.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Freedom and freedom. I'm a big Second Amendment person. When I say big, I believe in self-protection. When I say that, I want to be crystal clear about not having a cannon by the door, to take
Yeah.
away the wall and and the person who just might be knocking on a door selling cookies. There goes my wall, and there goes their two kids, and there goes that guy.
Yeah.
And for the same reason, you just cited as good policing, what they consider is not modern prevention.
Yeah.
Good
It's
policing
not.
is waiting for the crime to happen.
Right.
Tessa, if you and I are married and someone is stalking you, maybe you got a little piece of paper that says "Don't come near me." The cops have to wait for something to happen to you for
Exactly.
you to do
Exactly.
something about it. So
Right.
it's so weird that indirectly, like when you think of Democrats and Republicans, there's more as far as like meeting at the end. We have more in common than we have
Yeah.
more in common than what divides us. But when I saw that on your wall, I was like, boom, thank you. And the other thing I saw that I know you're big on is. And this is my common denominator in life, Tessa, mental health.
Yeah.
Everything is connected to
Yeah.
mental health.
I think that, like, the way you prevent crime, and, like, obviously we're talking in, like, really big terms here, and, like, not everyone can prescribe to the same kind of like methods of help, but to I think it's proven that it's like your communities are stronger and more safe if people have access to education, mental health, food, housing, health, and other health services, and social services. Affluent areas that are typically white have those things. Like, I grew up in a town in New Jersey that was very affluent. It was redlined. There was no busing or anything like that. And I was raised middle class, but like I had access to all those things, and I was able to go to college when I was 18 years old. Like a lot of privilege. We weren't rich or anything, but you're talking about, this is white privilege. It just doesn't always come in the package of like an evil, shitty person, but I benefited from those things.
Yeah.
I benefited from those social services. I was like a weird 6-year-old that used to have separation anxiety, and I saw a child psychologist. Like that does not happen for a lot of low income families, and they don't have the money and the resources to do that. And those low income families, more often than not in our country, are in Black and brown communities. So what's the answer? It's not more cops on the street. It's taking the money from the police departments for things like riot gear and putting it into money for food for those kids, for mental health services for those kids, better education for those kids, so that they're not desperate and they're not having to like steal food or rob someone for money so that they can, get a winter coat for their kid or something. Like, obviously I'm making up like,
No,
you know,
you're speaking hypothetically. I know.
yeah.
Which, by the way,
But
is a reality. These things,
yeah,
Tessa. These things. I mean, I'll bet you in New York. I'll bet you almost verbatim what you described.
yeah,
That's happened to someone, and
yeah,
I think one of my biggest gripes are I don't think something should have to happen for people to talk about mental health. I
yeah,
think mental health is an issue we can talk about now. In fact, all the way to the end of the podcast if we want,
yeah,
because people, everyone listening, listen up. Like veterans, homelessness or just basic homelessness, a lot is connected to mental health. There are
yeah,
people. I look. I know. I've heard stories of people that were Wall Street billionaires and they just became wacko and then they're living out on the streets. So it's not always someone that never had a shot that's down on their luck. And there
right,
are people. Mom kicks them out of the house when they're 18. They ain't got no job or this or that. So suicide is a mental health issue, right? Freud once said one's preservation of life is the very essence of sanity. So you'd have to be a little bit crazy if you want to kill yourself.
right.
And some people's like, no, it's logical. I got nothing go for me. I'm just going to off myself, but that's stupid.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, gun control, gun violence is a mental health issue. And I'm talking
Yeah,
about it now because I'm trying to wait between school shootings where people are like, oh, look at Jason. He's talking about mental health and I'm talking about regulating guns. So good. We ain't got no shooting right now. So in between school shootings, let's have this. Let's not avoid this. Let's talk about mental
right,
health. And
right, right,
isn't
right.
it amazing that all of these things that I just talked about are connected to
Yeah,
just whatever. We just had a conversation before I got on the podcast, right?
yeah,
In
yeah, yeah.
fact, you know
And
what? I think I'm gonna just break my silence right about this. If
yes,
if
right.
if
Because
you let
it's
me
so
indulge.
stigmatized.
Yeah.
It's so like anyone who's struggling with their emotional health, with feelings they're not sure they should be having, it's so stigmatized to talk about it that people keep it inside, it bottles up, and then it blows up one day. And I think that unfortunately, like just to bring it back to things like police brutality and stuff, like imagine if there was a force that had mental health training, so that when you were going and you were dealing with someone who's like having a psychotic break or like is just having a bad fucking day, like you had mental health professionals to deal with them and de-escalate it,
Hmm.
instead of someone with a gun and a taser who's just going to like severely injure or kill that person because they don't know how to deal with it, and maybe then they themselves are afraid. So that's obviously one direction of the conversation. Bring it
Yeah.
back to the grounded and how important mental health is in general. My God, I wish that it was like starting in kindergarten, you had a counselor that you could just speak to in the same way that you see a pediatrician, like, or that there's counselors in schools and stuff. It's so wild to me that like if you injure yourself, you go to the doctor. You're like, I don't feel so good. I hit my elbow. I think it might be cracked. When you injure yourself here or up here in your head, we should be able to do the same without any financial barrier and any social barrier of being judged for it.
Yeah.
So it's just wild to me that, well, it's not wild. I understand a lot of reasons why it's stigmatized, but it's sad. It
Yeah.
sucks.
Listen, I have a friend who I'm not going to name for his privacy. He's 80 years old. He's a cyclist. Met him in Hermosa Beach. For me, I start my day at Starbucks because if I start my day in my office, I'm not going to do shit. All right. It's just not going to happen. So they invented Starbucks for people like me where I could have a lot of people around me and none of you fucking talk to me.
Get
Don't talk.
coffee,
Don't
yeah.
talk to me. Right. So yeah, I had coffee with Tessa like half an hour ago. Um, that's a heat Al Pacino. But this gentleman didn't show up one morning, and all the other cyclists tell me what happened to him. Now he's 80 years old. He got knocked off his bike, and then when he fell off the bike, the guy just started beating the crap out of him.
Who started beating him up?
It was random. It wasn't,
Yeah.
he wasn't in anyone's way. It wasn't
Yeah.
like someone paid someone to do it. It wasn't like someone that had a grudge against them. It was almost Mancurian type. Maybe the guy heard, like
Right.
Mancurian, you hear a code, Bobby, bam, bam. So this guy got caught. This guy got arrested. This guy's going to get out of jail.
Right.
This guy's going to do it again. In fact, I ran it. The only reason I'm bringing it up is I ran into the guy this morning, and he's like, I'm glad they caught him, but I hope they don't lock him up for too long.
Yeah.
Obviously something's wrong with him and his level.
Yeah.
This guy's level of empathy and sympathy for that matter, and just saying, hey, he didn't. I don't think the guy even had a reason why. But I think the point I was trying to make was co-signing with you that sometimes incarceration isn't always the answer. I know incarceration isn't the answer for crimes against yourself. Okay, that's a whole nother subject we could just skip.
Yeah, and there are some people who can't be rehabilitated. There are some people that are, unfortunately, there's so much violence within them, for whether it's external reasons, whether it's a mental health illness, like a mental illness from within them that has not been treatable. There are some severe cases where I do believe there needs to be a safe place for those people to exist. Jail and prison is not a mental health, rehabilitation center, which is what a lot of these people actually need. And it's not a job, relief center. It's they're not really learning new skills. And the whole idea that it's supposed to be social rehabilitation is a lie. It's most of the time it's prison labor, all these for-profit prisons, so that we can have our Victoria's Secret underwear for cheap. That's why they exist.
Pennsylvania judge, man. Pennsylvania judge got jail for that shit, dude.
Yeah. So it's not to say
story,
that
right?
there are people out there who are a danger to themselves and a danger to others, and it's not to say that there shouldn't be a place for them to go so that they keep themselves safe and that they keep other people from being harmed. But I think your friend is right that whoever this man was that beat him up, there's no excuse for that. But I don't think sending him to prison for a couple months is going to make it any better or any different.
Right. I'm actually looking that up right now. Judge sentenced, prison scandal.
I mean, imagine just if you yourself, for some reason, got into a weird place in your life where you were to put out aggression on someone else. The idea is we're going to lock you up so you're going to learn your lesson. Mm-hmm. But where in history has that ever worked? Oh, I guess I learned my lesson because I'm going to be locked away. When kids get detention, do they never get detention ever again? No, they keep going back to detention because they're not actually, what they need maybe is help in school, or there's stuff going on at home that's making them act out. It's like you said, it's mental health maybe.
Check this out. So right here, this happened in 2011, but it's been happening for quite some time. A Pennsylvania judge was sentenced to 28 years in prison in connection to a bribery scandal that roiled the state's juvenile justice system. This judge basically was selling convictions to a private prison.
Right. This happens a lot.
Yeah. And you know what I'm saying? Maxing out on the sentences. For maybe the kid committed a violent crime, maybe it was a non-violent crime, and maybe it was a crime against himself. And you're right, when money comes into play, and how much, we can have a discussion on how much is enough.
Did you see 13th, which is the documentary by Ava DuVernay about the 13th Amendment?
No.
That was a game changer for me. I think it's still on Netflix. Came out a few years ago.
What's it called?
I highly recommend everybody watch it.
What's it called?
13th. And it's basically tells the story of how when slavery was abolished, it didn't actually go away. It just sort of switched over to the carceral system that we see now.
Right.
And what used to be slave patrol just became the police. Like the runaway slave patrol turned into the police force. And now, instead of having slaves do free labor, basically our police force arrests people so that they could put them into prisons and then have prison labor. I'm just going to keep using Victoria's Secret underwear as the example. I think Victoria's Secret's gotten a little bit better over the years, but if you can have people making underwear at 2 cents an hour, then that helps capitalism. And then it helps people like you and me who want to buy cheap, cute underwear. I actually hate Victoria's Secret underwear, but again, I'm just using that as an example. So
I don't know. I just like it on a mannequin. I'm sitting there like an old perv staring at a mannequin. Like, okay.
It's actually terribly made, so I don't buy it. But like, only wonder why, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, like that's just an example. It's like that prison pipeline. It's like the prison industrial complex is real, and it favors capitalism, and it favors our ability to get things cheaply and quickly, and it's using slave labor, and that just happens to be under the guise of people in prison and incarcerated, which is completely like inhumane and immoral. It doesn't matter. A lot of those people are not supposed to be there to begin with, and even those who like maybe technically broke the law, like the law is not, it's not like a statute for morality, because like segregation was legal, the Holocaust was legal. Like there are so many things in our world that were technically legal that were like abhorrent. So to say that somebody's a bad person just because they're in prison is like a totally unfair assessment,
Well, to quote the movie The Bonfire of the Vanities, he says, I'll tell you what justice is. Justice is the law. And he said, the law is man's feeble attempt to establish principles to shape a society of decency. Right. To make sure we are decent people. This is Morgan Freeman's little diatribe, a little soliloquy at the end when they called him a racist. So, and I believe, of course, one can always say the road to hell is paved with good intentions, but I think people have to realize when we have these realizations, we have to change with it. Right? Like, I mean, there were born again Christians back in the 1800s that owned slaves. Right? In their mind, they didn't, I mean, that was okay, right? I mean, right?
I mean, our founding fathers all owned slaves.
Well, the rationalization was if they weren't considered a person, they were biblically righteous. So, or if they were considered 3/5 of a person,
it's unfathomable.
Righteous. So, I'll give you another example, and this hit home. And they had a documentary about this produced by Jay-Z. Khalif Browder, ring a bell?
Keep going. Keep talking.
Khalif Browder is a high school kid that got stopped by the police just walking home, and the police accused him of stealing a backpack. He didn't steal the backpack. And this is how this is testament to what we're talking about. So bear with me, but don't get undressed. I mean, might be Victoria's Secret under there for all to see.
More like Target, nothing fancy.
Oh my, this is a Target chick, man.
Hey,
that's the way, baby. So he gets arrested, right? And he gets arraigned. His bail is set for $3,500. Doesn't seem like a lot for the middle class person. Mom can't afford bail. Guess what? He stays in jail. Right. So for the people listening and wondering, like, oh, he wouldn't if he was a good kid, he wouldn't have a criminal record. This is how easy it is for a kid to have a criminal record, right?
Yeah.
Basically, an assistant DA. No, forget about the assistant DA. This is going to piss you off. The public defender, the person assigned to defend him, says, listen, plead out to misdemeanor. It's on your record, but you don't have to stay in jail and wait for trial.
Right.
And they're like, look, one way or another, the system's gonna get you. All
Yes,
right, so
yes.
so
It's
you can choose this
horrible.
way now, or that guy can prosecute a ham sandwich. So
And a
so
and
the
a
guy who's
wealthier
supposed to be
person would have just
advocating for you,
gotten bailed out.
yeah, but the guy who's supposed to be advocating for you is
Yeah.
basically walking your hand to public records to make sure that
Yes.
you have a record. So the reason why I brought up this kid is because a lot of kids are like, I want to get the hell out of here. Fine, I did it.
Yeah.
As long as I don't do anything again,
Right.
because the cops
Right.
aren't going to stop me for no reason. So this won't come up again, right? They're not going to stop me for nothing. So the difference,
Yeah.
and if I'm getting warmer, just tell me But the difference between this kid and the other kids is like, I didn't do it, and I'm not going to say I didn't. So they're like,
Yeah.
okay, the trial is scheduled in a month and a half.
Hmm.
He is 16 years old, 15 going on 16. He is at Rikers Island awaiting trial, an adult gladiator academy, okay? This isn't juvie hall. This wasn't Brooklyn House of Detention.
Horrible.
He gets the district attorney's office files for a continuance. They get it. So now he's in jail longer. They file for another continuance. This kid was in jail for 3.5 years, for
Oh
almost
my
3 years,
God. Oh my
for
God.
stealing a backpack that he
That he didn't
didn't.
steal.
That obviously, I mean, look, I gotta believe him.
Right.
Ain't nobody gonna stay in jail to go all those years and be like, hey Tessa, by the way, I did steal that backpack.
No.
No. He did not steal. I believe, and you believe, and everybody who's listening to this. Now, I don't care what side of justice or whatever that kid
Yeah.
didn't steal that backpack. Finally, a judge. It goes on a judge's docket, and he's asking the DA, "What is this?" And the DA is like, "I don't know." And he's like, "You don't know? This kid's been in jail waiting for trial," and the judge throws it out. Just throws it out of court. Doesn't sentence him this time already served because he didn't have a bench trial. He didn't have a
Right.
jury trial. So, I mean, which is what would have happened. The judge would have sentenced him the time already served, seek probation. Your record's sealed unless the cops stop you
And
for,
this happens
the
so
right reason.
often.
It happens so often the other way, Tessa. It happens, this kid, Browder,
Yeah.
it doesn't happen. This doesn't happen his way. The other
Well,
kids
yeah, most
plead
people
out.
plead guilty.
The
Yeah.
other kids plead out so they can get out.
Yes.
This
I,
and
I
then
guess.
and then when he gets out, he hangs himself. He commits suicide a month.
Oh my God.
Yeah, months later after he gets out, he hangs himself.
That's
So
so upsetting.
and no, but we had this conversation about mental health and how it's shaped.
Yeah.
And then before we got on the podcast, we talked about. I was trying to suggest to you some people's mental health is affected by their what interrupts their psychological growth
Right.
from a toddler to a child to a teen to an adult teen to an idiot in their 20s to all the way to a full adult,
Yeah.
to a
Yeah.
full adult, and it's sad because if this kid ever got arrested again, oh, he has a record. Of course,
Right.
like if he gets shot in the back, and this is our most unfavorite thing, the public, a side of the public, spends a lot of time asking, well, what was his past record?
Right.
I mean, that's what they did.
Yeah. I
That's
mean,
what
and
they did with
that
Garner.
was
That's what they did
Eric
with.
Garner and also George Floyd. Like
Yeah.
a lot of people are like, oh, if you look at George Floyd's record, he was criminal. And it's like, I'm sorry. Even if he had broken the law, even if he had straight up walked in and stole a candy bar and walked out, it is not in the positions of law enforcement to kill that person in that moment.
The penalty
It is
shouldn't be
not.
death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, because like what was they were saying, like, oh, they suspected that he was using like a counterfeit $20 bill or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Nowhere is it written that a cop is supposed to kill that person, even if they were to have done that. Like, it's just, and also like with this kid you're talking about, what was his name?
Khalif Browder.
Khalif Browder, sorry.
I want to make sure.
Even if he had stolen a backpack, where is it at all like any kind of justice to be spending 3 years in jail, even if he had stolen the backpack? Like, these are just
He wasn't even he wasn't even sentenced.
right.
He was held. Trial pending.
Yeah.
It was, and we both know what it is. It was blackmail.
Yeah.
Like, oh, if you don't want to play ball with us, you're going to sit here until you die and turn to dust until you do it our way. And the kid, to his credit or to his demise, didn't give
Right.
up the goods. And the reason, I mean, it's weird because I'm not doing this podcast to make everybody sad and for Tessa and I to circle jerk on why we agree. I was trying to get to a place and I'm failing, so I'm just gonna jump to it. That about your stance on qualified immunity for officers, because one
Yeah.
of the few times that I've actually seen the public actually delve into the past history of the cops
Mm.
was Floyd. Of course, they're gonna delve into his history too, but I was like, wow, this is one of the few occasions where they actually looked at the cops' past, and well, what did we find? We found 18 complaints. 18
Yeah.
different complaints about this guy. I mean, were some of them bogus? Maybe. But 18?
That's a lot. Yeah, if at my job, if somebody complains about my work and is saying that I'm doing my
18
job
times?
incorrectly, I'm done. Like I'm fired, you know? I mean, I'm just a video editor. I work on like comedy TV shows. Like if I'm doing my job incorrectly and it's brought up more than once, more than likely I will be fired and I will not be rehired as a lot of these cops are. And there's just no way I'm coming back. But these cops have qualified immunity. It's like they can literally get away with murder. They're protected by the law. I mean, that was like in New York State when the protests first started, there was this really big push to repeal a statute known as 50A, which was basically a statute that allowed for legal protection of a cop's past and what they've done. So by repealing it, it was saying that now a cop's past is like public knowledge because you should know like who is this maniac you're dealing with who has 18 complaints against you. Now, was that changing things? Not really, because the cops are still doing things like chokehold in New York. Like it's really frustrating because we're working really hard to like, okay, well, if we can't completely like change the criminal justice system and like immediately get rid of cops as we know them, can we at least hold them accountable? Can we at least take away their qualified immunity? And it's just such an uphill battle. It's like every time we ask for the smallest amount of accountability, you know, they'll complain about it. Like the chokehold ban, they had a problem with it. They were like, there was a whole city council meeting where like, what's his name? Shay, not the supervisor. Oh, I'm blanking on the term. Not the chief officer. He like heads up the police department
Oh,
again.
the commissioner,
The
or the
commissioner,
chief of
yeah.
police. Okay.
Like they're like, we don't really understand what you mean chokehold. You have to explain this to us. And they're like, we're saying you can't kill people using a chokehold. Like, why do they need to argue against that? There's a group that I've done a little bit of volunteer work that you and your listeners should check out in New York called Hold Police Accountable. They have an Instagram page. It's just at Hold Police Accountable. And I think their website is like stoppoliceviolence.nyc.org. I'll double check that. But this is their coalition that is working to try and bring accountability to the police. Because right now in New York City, there's something called a CCRB, which is like a community review board, that if a cop does something wrong, let's say he kills someone, there is a city appointed review board that like the mayor's office chooses people to be on that review board to say like, okay, did this guy do right and wrong? Should he be fired? Let's see. Sounds good in theory, but these people are appointed, not nominated. So what this coalition is trying to do is make something called an elected civilian review board, an ECRB, which would mean that let's say a cop kills someone, let's say there's just police misconduct in any way. Instead of a mayoral appointed official, it's the people holding them accountable, and
The
these people
taxpayers.
would be electable. Yeah. I mean, they would be elected, you know, but elected civilians essentially, because that does not exist right now. So right now, the only people that are holding themselves accountable are the cops themselves. So that's like if a 6-year-old steals candy, you know, and you're like, hey, 6-year-old, what do you think your punishment should be? And the 6-year-old is like, well, I don't think I should be punished at all. That's what's happening in the police department right now.
Right.
Is like the people that are appointed to this civilian review board are just people that work with the cops. So there's no accountability, and it's also like fake accountability. So I think that that's like a step in the right direction. I don't think it's like ultimately the long-term solution, but I'm interested in stuff like that.
Yeah. I also think the media should do a better job highlighting examples of good policing as well. Like on an ultimate reversal here, Tessa, I'd like to cite the Hermosa Beach Police Department, where I live here. Okay. This guy knocked down a cyclist. They caught the guy taken peacefully, this and that. There were a set of a bunch of burglaries, caught the guy, whatever. So our police have gotten to know people in this zip code on a first name basis. The homeless guy who's picking in the trash cans, they know that guy's name. This guy, the people that work at Starbucks, he knows their name. There are, we attract certain weirdos from Venice. Maybe a cop will ask what his name is, and the guy says, "I'm not giving you your name." Fine, the cops will piss off or whatever. But the level of policing done here is very, very, very good. I mean, there are break-ins, and then they have a pattern of break-ins, and what they're doing is they're trying to prevent a break-in, because when a burglar has a certain pattern, it's like they're ready for the next one, or they're on call where the next one might be. So
Right.
their ways on trying to improve policing. Not just that, just getting to know people I'm coming full circle with that. Knowing who you are, Tessa,
Right,
your
right,
cops,
right.
knowing who you are on a first name basis humanizes you. If they humanize you, they're not going to choke you. Okay, there is, and this is an uncomfortable thing to talk about, and I'm so sorry, because I thought me and you were gonna have fun in this podcast, because we have so much shit to
Oh,
smile
but I
about.
am
But
having fun.
okay, good, me too. Fucking weird like that. Um, the reason why Floyd got choked is because the cops didn't see a person, saw a piece of shit. Eric Garner got choked because that guy didn't see a person. That guy saw a piece of shit. All right. In fact, if you look at the video in Eric Garner, this is one of many examples where the other cops were just chilling.
Yeah.
Like, if all police are not bad people, why are those guys chilling? And that's where I think good police departments should be highlighted for not just doing their job. It's like, oh, you did your job, good for you. I mean, listen, other people do get congratulated for doing their job, right? I mean, we're
Yeah.
watching a World Series game, right? If this guy pitches a shutout, I mean, he's getting millions of dollars to do it. The other team's getting millions of dollars to prevent it. He
Yeah.
did his job, but you do salute some of the people to do their job. And I didn't want this to be a total session of police bashing, and the reason why I highlighted Hermosa Beach is because the media and other police departments need to visit these departments, see how they work, and maybe use that. Like you said, there've been changes here and changes there, and the result is the same, right?
Yeah.
People are still getting incarcerated unfairly. People are still getting treated like a piece of shit. People are still getting profiled. I mean, we're New Yorkers, so we know all about stop and frisk. That's more my
Right,
time than
right.
yours. Under
No, I
under a mayor
remember.
that's beloved, by the way. So Mayor Bloomberg never ran as a Democrat in any of the 3 years.
I was not a fan of Mayor
No.
Bloomberg. I experienced real poverty during, his time. I
Mm-hmm.
experienced some of my favorite local businesses disappearing during his time. I was not a
Mayor
fan. But
Bloomberg
and stop and
was
frisk was the worst.
Yeah, well, Mayor Bloomberg was not an evil person. He was just highly incompetent. Like, for example, he gets elected a third term, which, by the way, they introduced a law that allowed him to do that because you're too young. New York mayor is only 2 terms. So
Right.
they changed some kind of legislation, allowed him to run in the third term because they knew damn well if he ran, he'd win.
He would be
And
elected.
he
Yeah.
did. Third term. So,
Crazy. He's a
which
billionaire,
which
so
is
he
crazy
can do
because
whatever
he's
he
the first one to
wants.
try to chase out Rudy Giuliani. Like, Giuliani wanted to stay on a little bit longer after 9/11. Not my favorite
Right.
guy, but he wanted to, stay on a little longer. And Bloomberg's like, nope, there are no third term mayors. And then boom, 8 years later, except me. But it's not what's evil in his heart, it's what's missing in his head. And I'm going to give you an example. When he got elected the third time, he visited Catholic churches, community leaders that were complaining that, listen, my rent's going up in Harlem. I lived here all my life. I didn't leave when it's bad. Why should I have to leave now that it's good? So
Right, right.
now, if you're a mayor and if you're not actually out there, if you're not actually sticking your head in these neighborhoods, and you issue a mandate saying, okay, 30% of this housing is affordable housing, 20% of this housing is affordable housing. Does Mayor Bloomberg know what affordable housing is?
No, of course not. He has
No.
no idea. He's a billionaire. He's never had to live below
Tessa,
the poverty line.
Tessa, if you got offered an apartment, affordable housing for 800 a month, but they said in order for you to be eligible for that affordable housing, you can't make more than $25,000 a year.
You
And
have
if
to
you
stay in
made and if you
poverty.
made $25,000 a year, can you afford the 800?
Right. No. I mean, also, yeah, your
No, you can't.
punishment, your punishment for being poor is to stay in poverty,
Yeah.
essentially. Like they keep you there.
But I
Yeah.
mean, does Bloomberg know that? I really don't think he does.
No.
I don't think he can, even if he's told that.
No.
And even if he's an evil guy and everybody's like, forget those guys, he then same thing. He
Yeah.
doesn't understand. So sometimes when it comes to politicians, it becomes what's evil in their heart. And when I say evil, I'm talking about greed, which is also a mental illness thing. And me and you,
Yeah.
we're gonna have a conversation about evil versus illness, because I did some
Mhm.
research on, there was a doctorate thesis on that I was interested in sharing. But sometimes people are just idiots. You know, sometimes
It's
people are just
true.
idiots.
That's the best way to
Yeah,
something
I
up. Is
mean
like, you know what though? At the end
Blo-
of the day, some people are just idiots.
and sometimes we elect them,
Yeah, we
right?
do. I wanted to go back to something you said a few minutes ago because you were
Please.
talking about like highlighting police departments who've done good work and like, yeah, as much as anti-police as I am and as much as like an abolitionist I might be, like I obviously think that there are good people out there who've taken the job of a police officer with good intentions. That said, let's talk about a situation of a police department, say in Hermosa Beach, where they're preventing break-ins, right?
Yeah.
That's a good thing. I'm more worried about who is this person that feels they need to break into someone's home because they're so desperate. They're so desperate that they need to, violate someone's life and steal a TV, steal some money, steal some jewelry, that they're so desperate. What are they not getting in their life? And as what kind of resources do they not have access to, that this is the point at which they've been brought? Because even if this good police department arrests the guy, gets him off the street, like, that's good for you and me because we don't want our houses to be broken into. It's very violating. It doesn't feel good. But I ultimately don't think that those good police officers are then providing this person with the rehabilitation they would actually need to never do that again. And if they're going to
Because
go
the
to
system
jail,
won't allow them to.
what's that?
The system won't allow them to, right? Like
Yeah,
if
I mean,
like let's say
they're
there's a police
police force.
psychologist that actually deals with prisoners too,
Yeah,
or suspects. If there's a police psychologist that actually doesn't just deal with cops. I
yeah,
mean, you want to talk about changing stuff within, talking about good ideas that might actually work, and like you said, how it all comes back full circle to mental health. That the
yeah,
person that broke in might be down on his luck. He might need the something that gives them a monetary advantage. But then there's some people, like Chris Rock had said, whatever happened to just crazy, you know?
yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
and they need a whole different level of help. And
yeah.
like I said, it sucks. It sucks to be violated, whether it's physically, whether it's you get stolen from. Like,
Or you
I've had
get
my
beat up for no
even
reason.
even when like I've had my bike stolen a few times. It's the worst feeling. It's just so violating, and
Hmm.
that's I'm talking about petty theft. A bike is petty. I'm not physically injured. I'm fine,
Hmm.
and like it's okay. I'll eventually get a new bike, but like just that feeling, like you want that person to have some kind of accountability.
Right.
Like I always think of that. Like if I could see the person who stole my bike, I wouldn't want to beat him up. I wouldn't want to call the cops because I don't think that's going to do anything. I want my bike back, and I want an apology, and I want them to look me in the face as a human and like have a conversation about like what's going on, why did you know, what if that was your bike and you needed it to get to work or something? Like that's a very like radical concept, is to have a conversation but with the person who has wronged you. But I think you hear that from a lot of victims too, of things like any sort of violence or anything. It's like they don't necessarily care if their violators are like sitting in jail. They want an apology, they want an acknowledgement of their humanity. Like that's not every case, but that makes sense to me. It's like just having
Yeah.
human conversation about those things is
Yeah.
never happens.
Well,
It's very rare.
well, on a systematic level, I think a good start is just knowing people's names. Let's say the guy doing break-ins.
I agree
But
with
let's
that.
say the guy doing break-ins was a neighborhood guy. Let's say
Right.
like Hermosa Beach is in LA County. Now that's
Mm-hmm.
like saying Brooklyn is in New York City.
Right.
Right? There's just there's Manhattan Beach, there's Hermosa Beach, there's Redondo Beach, there's the South Bay, there's Compton, right? There's South
Yeah.
Central, there's downtown Manhattan, Santa Monica. So LA County is huge. So,
Mm-hmm.
but let's say he is a neighborhood guy and they know
Yeah.
his name. Maybe the cops get together and say, hey, we need, you know, I mean, it's weird because they need to, first of all, they need to find someone that cares.
Yeah.
Are they going to go to the district attorney? No, the district attorney
there needs to
only
be
moves up the
different
chain of command by
departments.
incarcerating people, right? A
Right.
district attorney is not going to get elected in office by
And that's what
like Kamala Harris
defunding.
didn't become senator because
Right.
she was a sensitive prosecutor. She was pretty hardcore here,
She
right?
was really hardcore. She did some
mean,
fucked up shit. Yeah. I mean,
oof,
I'm
thank you,
voting
Tulsi
for her,
Gabbard,
but
boy, for pointing that out.
yeah,
I don't know
I'm
if you,
gonna vote
I don't
for
know if you saw
her.
that debate.
Them
I don't know if you saw that debate last year.
last year.
Third debate where Democratic debate. There's one going on tonight, and I'm glad we're doing this now because I don't really care about
Definitely
that
not
fucking
watching
shit
that.
show. You're like 6 o'clock, Jason. You are on. I'm not doing shit. So listen, and I'll frog leap back to this in a minute. A year ago, Democrats, and this is where I'm going to come at Democrats for a minute. A year ago, everybody, and if she could check people's social network things from December, November last year.
Mhm.
A year ago, everyone was saying Joe drop out. The guy
Yeah.
can't remember shit. All right, Joe drop out. The guy, he's like Denny Crane from Boston Legal. I mean, he might be good in the courtroom, but he,
He's so old.
so basically, the person leading the charge on that, Buttigieg hinted a little bit, but the person leading the charge was Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris called him out she couldn't call him out in his mental capacity because if he wins, they know the Republicans can use that against him. But
Kamala Harris called him out on busing, on segregation, and
like from
racism charges.
40 years ago, too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's to me. I mean, we can have another discussion about who you were 40 years ago and who you are now. Fuck
Right.
it, Tessa, who you were 2 years ago and
Sure,
who
sure.
you are now. So basically what happened was she, the whole time, for straight debates, was looking for an apology.
Yeah.
Did
Yeah.
you now apologize or this or that? So here's what happened in the debate, and I think I have it right here. Hold on.
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is
This is Tulsi Gabbard.
disproportionately negatively impacting black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana.
Now listen to the
She
applause.
blocked evidence.
It's true.
Blocked evidence that
It's
would
true.
have
She did
freed
it-
an
and she
innocent
did it
man from
worse.
death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail
Congresswoman.
system in place. That
They had
impacts
enough of
poor
Tulsi.
people in the worst kind of way.
Tulsi was
Congresswoman.
pretty
Senator
cool
Harris,
sometimes.
She was a savage. Well, I'll tell you about her in a minute and why she fell.
As
It's
the
one
elected
sentence.
Attorney General of California,
Hold on, let's.
I did the
I want her to
former
skip to the
offenders and
end.
getting
Position to make a difference and an impact in these people's lives. You did not, and worse yet, in the case of those who were on death row. Innocent people, you actually blocked evidence from being revealed that would have freed them until you were forced to do so. There is no excuse for that, and the people who suffered under your reign as prosecutor, you owe them an apology.
So that was her talking about, speaking of apologies.
Yes.
Now, what happened to Tulsi Gabbard? One sentence. You challenged the military-industrial complex. That's it. You're gone. You will be gaslighted, and there will be stuff out. There will be so much stuff out about you that some of people are going to believe some of it has to be true. You
Oh,
know?
I hate it. I hate it.
All the way up until you vote present. So, but Tulsi was my first choice because
cool. Yeah.
You have core beliefs, like your common denominator is mental health, and just making people better. My thing was anti-regime changing wars. That's my big thing. And if anyone that's running on that platform has my support. I served. I'm a Gulf War vet.
Right.
My father's a Vietnam vet. My grandfather, mother's side, Korean War. My father's side, World War II, Navy. Great-grandfather, World War I. So I have roots where every male member of our family served, including my kid's sister, who's 29, who did 2 tours in Afghanistan. So anytime we can get the hell out of these wars where we overthrow somebody and then just leave the country a mess, where it becomes our problem later on, or until it becomes full circle, I'm gonna vote for it. Bernie Sanders was never going to be president because he challenged the military-industrial complex. Tulsi Gabbard, who's still in the military, she's in year 17 as a major in the army, 2 tours in Iraq. If you challenge, she fell because of that one big reason. The second reason is Jeff Zucker is the president of CNN. And Jeff Zucker, for the first time in his life, openly endorsed one candidate to be president. That candidate was Kamala Harris. So, if you cross Harris and the president endorsed her, you're not going to be. You got to go to Fox News. You're not going to be on CNN anymore. So that was the end of her reign, as you know, we know it.
Like Biden and Harris, I'll be voting for them. I see them as like harm reduction. They're kind of the lesser of 2 evils in my eyes, for sure. Given
but you do so. But you do so with your eyes open. That's why you'll always have my respect.
I try. I mean, I think that there's a lot at stake, and ultimately, I do believe that like the 2-party system is completely broken, and it was sort of like it's working the way it was meant to work. So it until we can sort of crack that open and revolutionize in some way, I think we're stuck here for a long time in these like loops that we've been in of the same types of candidates that get like recycled over and over again. Because ultimately, like you're right, like both Biden and Harris have strong ties to law enforcement and uphold law enforcement and are backers of the military and stuff, and it's like until that changes, we're still going to be in the same place.
Agreed. Here's my stance, and if you've ever seen my Facebook wall, I introduce a topic and I get 150 posts, people from the left, people from the right. You don't see anyone attacking anyone's character because I just delete those comments and then until people behave themselves. But I've only had to delete comments on one person who, by the way, I found out was a troll. Doesn't even have an account anymore. He just came to mess with me. He came there with an agenda because of what I said about Kerry Waltz, like one of our volleyball players. So and me, like I said, I'm building my brand, and the number one rule is you don't feed the trolls. I shouldn't even answer back.
That's a good rule.
Don't feed the trolls. But everybody's
leave them under the bridge.
But everybody's like, Jason, who you're voting for and why? And I'm like, this is real. This is the truth. And as long as people are able to swallow what I'm saying without spitting, they'll agree with me. You have one person, if he stays in office, he's going to send us back to the Middle Ages in a year and a half. Yeah. Okay? I'm not going to say his name, but I can tell you he looks very, very fucking orange. The Cheeto in chief. Then you have another guy. By the time he gets to November, you're just happy if he remembers who he's running against. Right? So, Tessa, the question is, and it's a rhetorical question for me, but you can answer it too. The question is Joe Biden coming into November on a dementia drumstick still better than Donald Trump? If the answer is yes, you vote for Biden. If the answer is no, you vote for Trump. For me, the answer is yes. I'd rather have politics as normal than where I fear it's going to be headed in the next 2 years. I mean, and the weird thing is that party right now is the biggest proponent of boogeyman politics. Yeah. Like, oh, people are going to riot if you vote for this, or this is going to happen. They're going to take your guns. They're going to take your wife. They're going to raise your taxes. They're going to put a COVID pacifier in your baby's mouth. So, and it's so weird because the boogeyman politics should really go the other way. It is the devil I know versus the devil who you don't have any fucking idea what he's going to do next.
Yeah, and I think I.
But that's what I meant by voting with your eyes open.
Yeah, and I'm in a similar page. Like, yes, I'm voting for Biden and Harris.
Yep.
I think that I don't even know how to put this anymore, but like, I'm a really big advocate of like looking around at who are the most at-risk people, who are the most marginalized folks in our country that are the most like needy, say, and like we have a really big problem with racism and sexism in our country, and transphobia and homophobia, and I look at so many Americans who are not white and are not straight and are not cisgendered, that have been marginalized and are living below the poverty line, and they're the ones who are going to be affected the most. And a Trump supporter or a very conservative Republican might say, you're an idiot for worrying more about other people. You should put you and your family first, and we should put our country first. Like, that's what America is about. That's what my life is about. Like, and this is what I hear a lot, which is sort of like, my family first. Feed yourself first so that you can then have the strength to feed others or whatever. But I don't see it that way. Unless we're all getting a fair share, unless we're all getting an equal shot, like, the world is a worse place for me too. When those people are struggling, I'm going to struggle too. So there's just this mentality amongst a lot of conservatives, and I mean, I can't even call Trump supporters Republicans. It's like Tea Party mentality. It's just this like bully mentality of like me. Fuck whatever it is that you think. Like, you're a woman who wants to like have rights over her own body. I don't give a fuck, like there's just so much.
Be nice if they check with some women on that, but go ahead.
Yeah. But I'm losing my train of thought. I just think it's really depressing how many people only think about themselves when they're voting or when they're speaking up. And I think that puts them in a dangerous position too, without them even realizing it. Like, if you're falling down a hole and you reach up behind you, aren't you going to want someone's hand to hold so they pull you out? Are you going to get out yourself? Are you only ever going to depend on yourself and help yourself? Are you ever going to help anyone else? Because if you're falling down in that hole, aren't you going to want someone to like reach down and pull you up? You have to think about it both ways. And I just don't see that happening with all the rhetoric coming from, like, it's almost like,
well, maybe to them the hole is is so small they're not going to notice it. Like, none of them have an underlying fear that the hole those people fall down will become so big it's going to drag everybody down anyway, and which is what happened in 2008. Right? They just call it what it is. My wife hates when I say this because she's, she understands finance more than me, but I don't. Look, I don't have to be a chef to know what steak tastes like, and I don't have to be a financial expert to know that people gamble with our money and lost.
Right.
Here's where it generates from, because if I can tell you where it generates from, maybe you and I can can understand the situation and maybe helps people come up with some solutions. I grew up my family was very staunch Republican. I was all the way up to my military service, and even past my military service, I identify with those values. Pretty good values. Hey, believe in God, love the Lord, don't cheat on your wife, don't steal, this and that. These are not bad values, okay? These are, the reason why Republicans are Republicans is because they do believe in this kind of...
religion?
I'm talking about God's good news. I'm not talking about if you don't know if you're going to heaven or hell, you're going to hell. All right. There's fire and brimstone religion, and then there's spreading love.
But it's so interesting that, like, for you, your experience as a Republican was through religion. I think it's so interesting how closely they're tied, and like more so than ever. The idea of like the evangelical vote, the pro-life vote, like
some of it was.
What's that?
Some of it was, because I'm getting somewhere. This some of it was.
Sure.
Well, my dad's an iron worker, right? Not a Wall Street guy. My mom married my stepfather when I was 10. She was a single mom, got left by my dad with $1 to go on welfare. Me and my older sister. So, strong black woman, became a legal secretary, went to John Jay undergrad, went to Fordham Law School. So it's one of those people that found a way out. So there's the virtue is flawed and as follows. And again, bear with me. If there is a belief amongst many people from the right and some from the middle left too, that if you're rich and if you're prosperous, you deserve it. And you deserve it because you worked for it. So by that rationale, if you are not rich and if you don't have money, it's probably because you didn't work hard enough and you don't deserve it. And it is not an illogical leap for those people to think if you don't work hard, you're something's wrong with your morals. You know, and I don't mean to piss you off, because I can take how you feel and multiply it by 10, because I grew up. And I have friends even now are still check to check, paycheck to paycheck. Yeah. You know, I don't want to name names. I was going to name names. I'm like, you want to tell this guy's name that he's not working hard? This dude's a security guard doing doubles, working 8 to 10, working 4 to 12. And he looks at his check and it's like, congratulations, I made just enough to be broke. Exactly. This person, you know, listen, maybe some people aren't smart enough, or maybe some people are unfortunate enough, but I think you have to understand what people's level of thinking is. There are people that think their prosperity is self-imposed, is self-made. So if you think that they think that this person has good values that incite them to work hard and become rich. So the people that aren't rich, they assume don't work hard. And if they don't work hard, they assume they're not moral. They don't have morals. They just want to sit on their ass and wait for their handout, which is the biggest lie in right-wing politics. And there are people, we know people that are so far right, they're so far gone. They they can believe Trump had Rambo's body. I don't know if you remember, they had this like Trump's face, and they put Rambo's body. And there are people that are so far right that will not believe me. They think that's Trump's body. They're just those people are just gone. And then listen, then there's people who, when Obama got reelected, they were disappointed. 4 years under Obama, they were hoping that things would change. He promised change. Change wasn't delivered. They voted for Romney. Obama won, and they were butthurt by that. Right. So there are people that went for Trump because they were convinced in his ideals, and they were also scared to hell of boogeyman politics in regards to Hillary Clinton. Like Hillary Clinton was in 2016, out of everybody, Democrat or Republican, was the most qualified, but at the same time, more so than anybody, was the most vulnerable. Okay? Sure. And the reason why she lost, she by the way lost the biggest layup she blew the easiest. No, everyone blames independents. Oh, I blame these guys, I blame racists. No, fuck off. No, blame the DNC, because they were so arrogant. They looked at Trump and they went,
you won't win. Yeah.
What? This guy Rush Limbaugh said Trump's gonna win?
Never.
Didn't campaign in Michigan. Didn't do this. Didn't do that. Didn't see the warning signs. Now, I'm not saying everything that the Republicans were saying about Hillary was true, but I think Democrats have to be fucking naive to think that everything is false. And that's what the thing I was getting to. The person that you don't want to fuck with right now is the person that believes that everything is lies, and that other person that believes that everything is true. You know why? Because they are equally as dangerous. And I hope they go on an island and kill each other, honestly. But
it's so crazy.
Sorry.
I know, I agree. I agree with you there. It's like, if you're not using critical thinking when you're getting this information, and you're not using history to like help figure out what the hell is going on and why, like, what's the point of even caring? What's the point in even being vocal about it? Like, taking things at face value is just like bonkers to me. It's freaking bananas.
Agreed. But people thought it started in 2016. No, it got noticed by a party that won by 3 million votes.
Yeah.
All right. So it got more attention because there were more people. She won if you look at the general numbers.
She won the popular vote.
Yeah. By pretty much 3 million.
That's a lot.
But it happened before that. And I only knew that because I grew up Republican. I grew up a different way, and then I was a Democrat for a cup of coffee, and now I'm registered under no party preference, which allows me to at least vote provisionally in any primary I want.
Sure.
The day after Obama got reelected, some of my Republican friends had an upside down flag as their profile picture, and I'm like, really? The people that are talking about respect for the flag are now your profile pic is a distress signal. Now, I'm not a Republican, but I hold values from both parties. And as an ex-military guy, there are certain things that are deal breakers as my friend. If you have an upside down flag, you're just not my fucking friend. All right.
Right.
You're just, and I know it's your right. And I know it's your freedom to burn a flag. It's your freedom to whatever. I have a huge peeve about false distress, and I have a
Yeah.
huge peeve about burning the flag. You want to kneel for the flag? Kneel away. Kneel away, because you're doing so respectfully. In fact, the guy that told Colin Kaepernick to kneel was in the spec ops. He was ex-military. He was a
Yeah.
veteran in the spec ops community, because that's your freedom. But
It's so interesting.
please.
I've been thinking a lot about the flag recently because I have no interest in displaying it in any way, because to me, all I see when I see the American flag is racism. I see the Confederate flag. When I see the stars and stripes, and there's a lot of them in my neighborhood because I live in a very Italian American neighborhood that has like Italian and American flags like on
And
all their
vets.
front yards. All I can see
Yeah.
is our racist history. And it's so upsetting to me. Like when I see the American flag now, I don't feel pride and I don't feel any sort of loyalty. Like all I feel is anger and sadness at our racist history against Black people.
Well, you would,
that's
of
what
course,
it-
you'd feel that way because that's your understanding of what the flag is, or your perception
Yeah.
of the flag.
That's what
You
our
know?
country was born out of. our country was
The
like
country
born out
was,
of
but
wanting-
but if you look at the history of the flag, it wasn't.
but that's what the flag stood for, was like the ability for like those men to be able to have slaves and like build a country based on slave labor. Capitalism is built on slave labor
Absolutely.
today and then.
Absolutely,
So
but
I can't see that flag and not associate it with it, because to me that's what it stands for. So
and that's what I'm saying. If that's your perception, of course you can't. No one's gonna make you see it a different way. But I'm gonna stop you
Right.
actually on historical fact. Historical fact: the American flag was originally a military guidon. It was a military guidon composed in a battalion for the civil union that was fighting against the Confederates. So it's I mean, listen, the slaves were free, but they had a different slavery system. So I understand, like you said, the shaping of America, even after President Lincoln's Emancipation
Yeah.
Proclamation, still remains tainted. But the
Right,
origination of the flag, and this is why veterans are big on it, it was not an American thing. It was a military thing before it was an American thing. It was a guidon. And it was something that they were like, oh, this battalion kicks ass. This battalion, I think they're gonna have there's a company where one platoon is all Black. So
Right.
it started the flag before Betsy Ross and all those people decided to
Yeah,
sew
yeah,
shit.
yeah.
This is a historical fact. It was built on an ideal and a commitment to freedom that like you said remains flawed, right? Like if you're racist, right? Look, if you're
Well, and I appreciate you correcting me, because
Yeah.
that's history
no,
is
but
important.
but listen, what the flag has changed into, there's nobody that's gonna say anything that's gonna change your mind about how you feel about that, because right now you look at it and it's supposed to represent an ideal, but if that's not what you see any day, like if you're seeing people getting shot in the back, you're looking at the flag, oh, ideals. You seeing people getting fucked on their taxes, where our own president, fuck it, I'm gonna mention his name, Donald Trump, and now I'm flagged for social issues, but Donald Trump paid less taxes than his fucking secretary did, and then you
Yeah.
look at the flag, oh, ideals, freedom, and then you look at this going wrong, oh, ideals, flag, freedom. Sooner or later you're gonna look at the flag and be like, fuck that. Fuck
Yeah.
that. But for me, the flag means something different to me because it wasn't a person, it was an idea. And
Right.
if the idea, like Christianity is an idea. The teachings of Christ, don't cheat on your wife, don't kill nobody, save one
Yeah.
day out of the week, you go and have fun, sing, fellowship, and the kids play frisbee after church. This is an idea that gets tainted by people with either with an agenda or just people who are just fucking evil, right? So
Yeah.
for
I mean,
me,
and that might be why I have such a hard time with symbolism in general.
Yeah.
Like, because people take it and twist it. And I mean, look at the swastika. That was not originated by the Nazi Germany. It was an old, ancient, like Asian, I think from Thailand, and even before, like other parts of East Asia. Like it just dates way, way back.
Right.
But there's something really dangerous about symbolism when it's taken and it's like turned into propaganda and it's capitalized upon, and that's happened with our flag too. So, and it's kind of why, like, I don't know. It's like I don't wear a lot of logos. I don't wear a lot of, because it's just there's a social attachment to it that says, I'm better than you, I'm smarter than you, you're more liberal, you're, conservative. It's like we attach way too many ideas to one symbol when it maybe it's like, instead of actually just honoring the idea.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's okay, because I'm also a very aesthetic person, and I like, there's certain things I like about symbolism in other ways, but
Yeah.
it's like the Trump flag is crazy to me. Now, like, since when
I
is
mean,
it
we used
about
to
a
have
person?
stickers on the car, but now it's just, look how terrified you are.
It's just like they took the KKK flag and then they were like, let's just add a name on it. Like,
Yeah.
it's just like another, like, never before have people been flying the name of a president as like, that's not patriotism.
No, that's
like,
nationalism.
This is your cult. It's national. Well, it's more than nationalism. It's like, that's their cult leader and they have their name on it. Like,
No, it's loyalty regardless. Like patriotism, dissension is the greatest form of patriotism. Loyalty is the greatest form of nationalism. Think about that. Little brief history on Colin Kaepernick that a lot of people don't know that you might not know. The NFL, all the way up until 2009, didn't have the players out for the national anthem. The national anthem would be played. People in the audience decide to stand or sit or whatever.
Sure.
And then when the national anthem's done, they announce the starting lineups of the players.
why
and then the
did they-
players
yes,
and then the
what
players
is
come
this
out.
about?
I'm getting there. Ready? You ready? Come on. I'm stirring the pot, girl, since we're fucking doing it. The government of the United States paid $2.2 billion for the players to stand out, to stay outside for the national anthem. Paid patriotism. They were using it to try to recruit people to join the army. Had the jets fly overhead, Star Spangled. You know what I'm saying? Star Spangled as fuck. 2009 was when they started
So
asking.
recent.
They started asking players to stand up for the national anthem, which some would argue is trying to make someone parrot your free speech. I heard a lawyer try to make an argument, like, my free speech is not to stand for the flag, and you're trying to make me, this is a job, and you're trying to make me parrot your free speech. So the two reasons why it's a problem is because they started making the players. The players never even came out. That was one. And two, the NFL has something called a CBA, a collective bargaining agreement, where they all agreed. There was no agreement in the CBA to stand or kneel. Like in the NBA, everybody stood because it was in a collective bargaining agreement, and everyone stood, no problem. But the NFL didn't have one for that, so it was Kaepernick's right to kneel. So, so for me, look, the whole flag thing I was talking about, I see the flag as more of an ideal than a person. Right? Like if you watch Thor Ragnarok, right? Asgard got destroyed. Asgard isn't a place. It's a people. It's an idea. So, and then Thanos came along, but I know what it's like to lose. But for me, on a personal level, kneel, fine. Stand, that's fine. Put your hand over your heart, that's fine. Salute, fine. Sit, fine. Please don't burn it. It's your right to burn the flag. But for me, just on a personal note, and like the same thing how it breaks your heart to look at the flag because it's racism, it breaks my heart to see someone take this idea and say, just because people are assholes, we need to burn the idea because the idea sucked to begin with. To me, the idea never sucked to me.
I think the idea of America kind of sucked, which was like, the way that the Constitution is written, it never mentions women, and Black people are not considered people. I think that's
bullshit
a
rationalization. Wasn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And
I don't think that this like experiment of a country where like that was the idea of freedom, which is that only one specific type of person can be free, and it's going to be in the pursuit of like capital, essentially. I actually don't think it's a good idea for a country. So I am okay with burning it down. Like, I don't personally have the solution of exactly how we rebuild. I have some ideas, but I do think that like we need, a symbolic burning down of all of these systems of white supremacy that exist in our country in order to rise up like a phoenix, like a beautiful phoenix from the ashes, because the experiment didn't work.
Well, the genius of the Constitution.
Well,
the genius of the Constitution is the experiment's not written in stone. Like if you read the actual Constitution, everything is subject to change. The Constitution, a lot of people don't know, left themselves an out.
Right.
right? Which
But
is why,
whenever we try and change it, people like to hold it in their hands and say, you can't change the Constitution, and you can. It's just that people go up in arms about it.
yeah,
So,
and
like,
not everyone's going to agree that radicalism works, but man, check your
Yeah.
history, folks.
it's a
Check
good
your
point.
history,
And that's
folks.
it's a weak spot for me. I think
Yeah.
that like I have a weakness in terms of my like going back to history and being
Right.
able to really cite it like eloquently.
I only knew because I'm ex-military. I didn't come armed with these facts. I came armed with other stuff like police stuff or whatever. I did my research on the Indian tribe. I was maybe we talk about that. Maybe we don't. The Lenape tribe.
Yeah.
Or the Lenape. That's for people who are still with us. and
know.
Not too angry about this shit. Maybe we talk about that. But I'll give you another example. Right. Women are getting paid. Example situation. Women are getting paid 70 cents on the dollar. Right. Everyone thinks this is unfair. The idea that women should have equal work for equal pay. That's an idea. That's not a person. Now here's what happens. There's 12 people that get into a room that decide how much women are going to get paid or if they get paid.
Right.
If all 12 people are men and there's not a woman in a room, does the idea need to be burned down, or do just people, sucky people need to be replaced, right? So the same thing we were talking about social issues about black people, like the last thing we need to do is get a whole bunch of our white friends and say, hey boys, okay, this is how we're going to treat black people from now on. That's right. From now on, this whole back of the bus thing, there ain't going to be no white, no black. Everybody's green, okay? Light green in the front, dark green in the back. So, I mean, it's not, so the solution, the genius of the Constitution is the solutions change and change and change. And the frustration is the changes aren't working.
Yeah, they're not working, and there's always such a fight for those changes, and often the fight goes on and on and on, and it just goes in through like a loop. It's like we're just repeating ourselves. We're having the same fights. We're talking about reversing Roe v. Wade. It's like, oh my God, we already won this fight.
They're out of their fucking minds. Well, it's the same thing with the flag, right? We won. I mean, that got fought over a century and a half ago. There was a winner and there's a loser.
Yeah.
Honestly, anyone that wants a Confederate flag, I don't want it banned. I want it right out I want it right out in front of their house. You know why? Because I get to know who they are. Right.
I
don't want no.
That's how I feel about the Trump flag.
Yeah, you think I want a KKK member behind a mask? No, take that fucker off, man.
Yeah.
Your first and last name, and your job gonna know who you are too.
Yeah, I know, but apparently that doesn't matter anymore.
Well, here's the problem with Trump, and this is where you're definitely gonna disagree with me heavily. I don't think the guy's a racist. I don't think he's a racist at all. I just think that it's not a deal breaker. I think that if he openly revolts against racism and makes a heightened emphasis on it, he is not going to win this election. My friends disagree with me. They said racist didn't elect Trump. I'm like, no, racist helped the tiebreaker. You know, the man's money and the man's bottom line
He's
means
an opportunist.
It means more to him than any race could ever whatever. All the way back from Q Forest High School in Queens.
Yeah. I definitely think that he's an opportunist first.
Yeah.
So he will align himself with whatever is like the most aggressive mentality possible. He's an opportunist first. But I would say that he's a staunch racist because he's so complicit with literal racists like David Duke of the KKK, Steve Bannon, like
you're gonna tell me you didn't know who that guy was. He's gonna tell me he didn't know who that was.
That's what I'm saying. It's like you can't not be racist and work this closely with self-proclaimed racists. That is racism. Working side by side with self-proclaimed racists is racism.
But that's the question. Did he? I am not out here trying to go to battle for Trump, but that's a true. No, but this is the truthful question. Did he work side by side with David Duke? Or is that just a mind fuck?
When you say like the guy's got some good ideas and stuff, like I consider that like siding with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I could never run for office. I had a conversation one time because my infatuation is World War II. I'm intrigued with how some people could take a beach where they the air raid already got shot down. Airborne, 100 Air Force Airborne was scattered all over the place. These people hitting a beach, they should have gotten hosed down, and that should have been the end of it. The Germans had the intelligence, they had the integrity, they had the elevated position, and these guys took the beach anyway. So that's one of many battles that just makes me, I go to bed thinking about World War II. So because of just the bravery and the acts of just some great non-commissioned officers and some officers. So there was Nazi officers had a belt buckle that tied to a string on their left hand, and when they raised their left hand, it would shoot a projectile like a bullet at whoever was whatever. So Nazi officers had this thing, whenever they lifted their left, maybe they're pretending to surrender or whatever, boom, you get shot. So I was in a conversation one night and I said, damn, that's fucking brilliant. If I were running for office, Jason supports Nazis. Jason supports Nazis. So didn't Bernie Sanders had an equal problem, right? He Cuba's health system.
Right.
The healthcare system. He loved the way it worked, and he loved the as far as how
Well,
people were able to save a
social
lot of
healthcare.
money. But it's very easy to make the illogical leap that he supports Castro. That's not what he's doing. And I'm not trying to defend Trump. I just don't see any situation where he was working side by side with David Duke. But if he was, and someone says, I told you so, I'm just going to say,
Well,
I'm
look,
not surprised, motherfucker.
And I know you're not trying to defend Trump and that,
no.
but in
I'm
terms
uncomfortable
of, like, the
even
question
like
of,
I throw up in my mouth a little
I know
bit,
you're not.
you
But
know?
like the question of, is he racist? Like, there's a lot of examples. Like, he put out a 2-page ad in the New York Times for the arrest of the Central Park Five, which was the 5 Black teenagers that were accused of rape and murder in the late 80s that actually were acquitted and did not do it.
Yeah.
And he put out, and it was something like get these,
Give him the
Black
death
kids off.
penalty. Yeah.
give them the death penalty. He used to clear, he is the Taj Mahal casino, and anytime there was like a big wig gambler that came in, some like good old boy white guy, he would clear off all the Black employees off the floor, so that when these like big wig gamblers would come in, these old white guys, there were no Black people in their sight. Like, he is racist, because even if he himself is totally fine hanging out with people of color or whatever, like, if you're complicit with that behavior and you're enabling it, then you too are racist.
If that guy, Tessa, that guy goes to casino and he's going to spend $11 million, and Trump knows he's going to walk away with $3 million in one night, he's going to clear out some Black folks. Racist, in the classic sense of the word, of the definition, is the inherent belief that one is superior or inferior based on their race. And by that rationale, I think you and I can come up with stories personally, or just the trend, a historical trend on this man, that if someone said he was racist, I'm not going to argue with him. It was just my opinion that I didn't think he was. I just thought he was bottom line before that. Like, if Kanye West got some money to spend at that same casino and be like, yo, I want Black only waiters, guess what? He's gonna tell them white motherfuckers to go home. Okay.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you that he's an opportunist first. 100. I actually would totally agree with that.
Yeah.
I think that
I think he's bigoted. I think he's a bigot.
Yeah.
I grew up a bigot. I grew up, and I'm a Christian. I grew up this Christian family. I hated gay people. Didn't even know any gay people. I don't know what a gay person looks like, but I can't stand them. Yeah.
But you can't say, like, even though he's an opportunist first, nobody in good faith can, have things like a Muslim ban and say that there's like bad hombres coming over from the border that are going to rape and kill us.
Yeah.
Like, that is the belief that
or Proud Boys stand by and shit like that.
Right. If the textbook definition of racism is a belief in superiority because of one's called the color of their skin, then those are
race,
verbatim
not color
examples.
Skin, race. Not color of the skin, race. Like, I'm technically Black, right? Do I look Black?
Right.
No.
Race. Yeah.
I do have a little Bart Simpson yellow thing going,
I was thinking about The Simpsons and how, like, okay, so Marge has
it
big
could be
blue
white,
hair.
or that could be a Black family, right? A bunch of light-skinned brothers and sisters. Marge's hair is that is Brooklyn hairdresser shit right
Yeah,
there,
for
dude.
sure. I mean, like, she's got this tall ass blue hair. Lisa and Bart have spikes. I'm like, where did they get those yellow spikes from? Because nobody in the family's got that. Patty and Selma, they have hair like mine. you know, I guess Abe Simpson, like Homer's father, has like weird little like swervy spikes. But like when you see episodes of Homer as a kid, he had brown hair. So where the fuck did the Simpsons kids get their hair from?
Told you. Come on, and they're called the Simpsons.
It's a black name. Yeah. You might be right.
Yeah, just don't kill nobody, right? And just don't kill nobody named Nicole. And you'll be all right.
True.
Oh man, so it was. That was. I'm so glad we talked about that because I had that argument with my wife. She's like, I've never looked at it that way, and I want to stop talking about this.
That's so
She's
funny.
like, I don't want to talk about this anymore. I'm like, okay.
Yep. I love it. I love this. I'm a big fan of the old Simpsons seasons.
Yeah, me too. I grew up, as far as I think black comedies were concerned. I grew up a Cosby kid. I really like the
Me
Bill Cosby show.
Me too.
I'm sad that they canceled the show because he was an idiot, right? I mean, I mean, is it fair that for Denise and Rudy and all of, Claire and all those people who have a chance to get residual income because of the episodes are being played? Same thing with Roseanne,
Yes, I know, but I love, before all the Cosby stuff came out, like I loved that show as a kid. I watched it. I would watch reruns in high school and college. I would watch reruns. Like, I mean, to this day, if I turned the show on, I would be like, this is a great show.
My favorite episode was when they had a snake in the house.
Oh.
Right. And Theo, was like, he's like, I don't the dad's like, I don't want it to climb up the stairs. And Theo's like, don't worry, Dad, it can't climb up the stairs. It's a scientific fact. Right. So he figures because his kid's in school. Right. And Theo's pretty smart, like an average Brooklyn kid. In fact, he grew up in those brownstones in Brooklyn where I think they were filming the Cosbys. I don't know if
Brooklyn
it was in Hollywood, but Flatbush Avenue, like Rutland Road, like Fenimore, Midwood Street, Maple. That's the set of beautiful brownstones up there. Yeah. I grew up in Chester Court, the dead end street, across from those on Flatbush, on the other side. So Claire's like, I don't want that snake to climb up the stairs. I want it out of my house. She's just scared to death. I want it out of my house. Do you want me to stay? Yes, I want you to stay. You want me to stay? Yes. So she's like, I don't want that snake to climb up the stairs. So Bill goes, come on, Claire. The snake's not going to climb the stairs. And she's like, how do I know that? He's like, Claire, snakes do not climb up stairs. And she said, who told you that? He goes, it's a scientific fact. And she's like, well, how do they get up trees? He goes, they fall off the cliff. So the snake expert's like, comes in the house and he's like, yeah, you can climb upstairs. Trees, walls, you name it, they can climb. And she's like, Cliff. He's like, Theo. And Theo's like, I'm sorry.
Didn't pay attention to school.
Yeah, I liked the Cosby Show. I liked Martin. Martin Lawrence.
I remember Martin.
Until he obsessed over Tisha Campbell and that show got canceled.
Too bad.
Yeah, they did a whole season.
Do you remember hanging with Mr. Cooper?
Yes. Yeah.
That's one. And then Webster?
Yeah, Webster. Well, to me, I'm older. I was Different Strokes.
Yeah, Gary.
Yeah, Todd
Coleman,
Bridges.
right?
Yep. I was a Three's Company guy too. I always like the sexual innuendo. I mean, when you're in junior high school, you celebrate sexual innuendo. Like I got to go get my balls, and she's like, So they take something, and
right.
And this level of social immaturity was just awesome growing up.
I love those reruns now, though. There's something comforting about them.
Yeah.
But
what's comforting to me? Please,
before I have to head out because I have to get going in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
This was I actually loved this conversation.
Super necessary.
Yeah.
And you got to come back where we can talk about. I mean, like if people just scrolled all the way to the end of this, they'd probably laugh.
You just got to get to the Simpsons. Yeah.
Yeah, Simpsons. Well, before you go, I wanted to let you know that I am a fan of your critical thinking.
Thank you.
Because to me, the biggest enemy of critical thinking is tribalism. And at some point, you're going to lean more one way than the other because Brecht believed that change can never happen through one person. It has to be collective. So maybe and sometimes you have to swallow some things and pick your clique, right? We're picking a president. some and qualifies as close enough. All right. My personal bias believes that Barack was the best president I've ever had in my lifetime. I'm 50, so my personal bias does not prevent my critical thinking skills on him. Like, I'm not down with him droning fucking people. No, I'm not down with him.
Right.
I'm not down with them spying on American citizens. I'm not down with knowing that the ACA is going to save a lot of people, but statistically it's going to leave out 295,000 people. So which, by the way, is the same amount of people who are dead from COVID. So it's just weird how this math and administrations come accept.
Interesting.
There's a difference between being left out and being dead. So I mean, it's not a fair comparison either. But before you go, I wanted to let you know, and I was going to share the story about retrospective action, but I could definitely wait. I'll open up a little bit about myself that some people never knew. But I think it's important for us to talk about in the near distant future, because there's another Jason out there that has that same story and is like, you know what? I never looked at it about this that way, and why am I still fucked up? And maybe I can raise the question. But
that's a great thing to end on, which is like going back to where we started our conversation, is the importance of mental health. Like, I waited until I was 31 to start therapy. Like, I've had a therapist since then. I've had actually tried a few until I found one that felt like the right fit for me. And one of my only regrets in my life is that I didn't start sooner. And maybe part of that was financial, because it does cost money to see a therapist. Although my first one I had through Medicaid, so I actually didn't have to pay. So it is possible to receive mental health, even if you don't have, the finances for it. That said, I wish I hadn't waited so long, because I think there's so much within us to discover and figure out and grow with and evolve from, that until you start to build that muscle of self-awareness, it can really hold you back from just so many things, and uncovering and healing from so many past traumas, and figuring out things you're dealing with that you're like, wait, I always have this problem. This is a pattern. Like, I just wish that I hadn't been so scared to go, because I was so unsure about it, and there was stigma and stuff. Like, I just wish I hadn't waited so long. It's like, I'm always going to be a work in progress, but I think that therapy has been this really incredible tool for me, that when I'm going through something hard, I'm like, okay, I have my friends, I have my family, I could have a night to myself to just chill, watch TV, zone out or whatever. But then I know that once a week, I have this kind of objective mental health professional who knows me really well at this point, and it's just this other tool that helps me navigate through the harder things in life. And it's something that I feel like should be free and accessible to everyone, and I know it's not always, but I wish it was. And man, if it was, what a different world we could be living in.
For the people listening at home, I'll leave you with this message. Your compassion should be measured by you differentiating evil versus illness. Okay, that's all the way from someone who's stealing something all the way to the serial killer. For the people listening, I want you to take a look at some things in your childhood and your psychological growth where one thing has nothing to do with the other. Maybe someone tried to fill you up, and then a month later you're failing science class. One thing has nothing to do with the other. Take a look back at some of these things and just raise the question, re-raise the question. If you need therapy and you need help, seek it. And if you have friends that you could have a conversation with, seek them. And if you have people that you can just vent and spill, that they can keep your secrets if something is a secret, or if they're just someone they can listen to and pose questions with, you do that too. Okay. Tessa Greenberg, we didn't even get in the theater. You got to come back on. There's so much. I have such sights to show you. It's okay. To quote the movie
Hellraiser.
Hellraiser.
To come back. Thank you for having me.
The pleasure's all mine. Ariel Sims, if you're listening, I adore you. Always have. That's your sister from another mother right there, right?
Yes.
So. Anything you want to plug before we go? Like a particular site? Like, are you an independent film editor right now? As far as independent theater too, and theater performance, what do you want to plug?
Yeah, totally. You're right. We didn't get to talk about any of our fun creative stuff, but that's right. You and I met when we were in theater school, And since then, I've gone on to a career in film and television, and I've been directing and editing. So a lot of my film work is on my website at videobytessa.com. It's exactly how it sounds.
Videobytessa.com.
Videobytessa.com. And then you just called out one of my best friends, Ariel Sims, who went to Marymount Manhattan College. Her and I are working on an album because we've always played music together and written and performed music. So we have a band called The Weekend Ladies, and we have an EP coming out at the end of the year. So if you follow us on Instagram, then you can have some good electro
What's the
pop
Instagram
music
handle?
to look forward to.
What's the handle?
Huh?
What's the handle for Instagram?
Oh, at The Weekend Ladies.
Weekend Ladies. Okay.
The Weekend
Just one
Ladies,
word?
yeah.
Just one word?
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Yep,
cool.
that's on Instagram.
All right, listen, this woman's hungry, man. It's probably like 11 o'clock over there. So Tessa Greenberg might love all of you, but for me, I had it with you, okay? I had enough of you. In fact, I'm done. For all of you at home, for all of you watching this on your iPad, for all of you watching this on your iPhone while listening to the debate, for all of you on your Droid, for all of you on your desktop, who runs the world? Old school, old school. For Tessa Greenberg, this is episode 61 of the Option Podcast, and I am Jason DeBias, and we both say, we're out.
Goodbye.
Come check out the Option Podcast on optionvb.com. It's also available on iTunes and Spotify and on YouTube under the NY Varsity Sports handle. You're going to love what you hear.